I'm Matt Kane. I've been building for the web for 25 years now. I'm currently the framework lead at Astro, and I've previously been a core maintainer at Gatsby. And most recently, I was working at Netlify on the frameworks team, where I made sure that all of the frameworks worked well. So basically, I work with a lot of frameworks. I've tried them all, and I'm here today to talk about why I think Astro is the best choice for building content-driven sites. So what is Astro? How many here have used Astro before? A few. How many have heard of Astro before today? All right, that's pretty good. I'm not going to assume too much knowledge about Astro here, but I'm going to give a brief intro to what Astro is, and then how you can use it and what makes it special. So at its core, Astro is a web meta framework, which is like Next.js or Remix or Nuxt. But there are a few things that make Astro special. First of all, there is our focus. Astro is specifically designed for content. You can build brilliant interactive apps using Astro if you want to, but really our focus is on content. We're not trying to be all things to all people. We're there for if you're building a content-driven site. And part of that is that Astro is really fast, and that is the sort of key benefit that you get with Astro. By default, no framework is faster. And how do we do this? Astro is server first, which means we will start out by doing statically generating your pages, if that is possible. And we will also, if you can't do it statically pre-generated, you can do server-side rendering for it. And this means that by default, we can send 0 JavaScript. JavaScript is the thing that mostly is going to slow your site down. So if it's possible, Astro will send no JavaScript at all. That's its big trick. But when you do need interactivity, you can specify exactly which bits you need to have your interactivity in there. So that gives you this real flexibility for, when a site is mostly static, you can keep it static. And then the bits that need some sort of interactivity, you can sprinkle it in there where it's needed. And when you do that, one of Astro's super tricks is you can bring your own framework. If you like using React or Vue or Svelte or Solid or Preact or Quick, or you can drop those in there and you can import them, and you can even import more than one if you want. And that's the way that you can bring your own framework and use the ones that work with you. We will meet you where you are. Or you can just use plain HTML, vanilla JavaScript if you want to go old school. All of this means developers love Astro. I think that's our main key thing. And I brought receipts. In the latest State of JS survey, Astro, #1 on interest. People have heard how great it is. #1 on positivity. If they've tried it, they love it. And then #1 in retention. You've tried it, you want to keep using it. But enough of talking about how great Astro is. I could do that all day, but we're at StrapiConf, so let's talk about content. I've said that Astro is the framework for content-driven sites, but what is a content-driven site? I'd say it covers a lot of things, but primarily it would be any site that is mostly about its content rather than about interactivity. So obviously, in the beginning, all sites were content-driven sites, but over the years, more apps have come in there. It's got more interactive and everything. But still, the majority of sites, I would say, are content-driven. So some examples, you would say marketing sites. Now, all of these things on the side are fully Astro sites. So here, Michelin now, that is fully Astro. Other ones that we would have for marketing sites would be Porsche, IKEA, Netlify. These are all marketing sites where their .com is on Astro. Docs, another content-driven site. Cloudflare recently moved their entire Docs site, tens of thousands of pages now on Astro. And then slightly more controversial, eCommerce. I would say eCommerce, obviously there is interactivity. You have your carts and checkouts and all that kind of thing. But mostly, an e-commerce site is about its products, and that's content. So it's content-driven sites. Blogs, I had to put this one in here because I was just so pleased when it came out. NASA uses Astro now, so you can have your blogs on there. And then your portfolios. This is where we all start. This is mine. I didn't make this in 1990. I made it last month. But it's where people try out Astro because it's fun and it's easy and it's a good starting point. But why do content-driven sites need a different approach? I mean, you've got these frameworks like, as you're saying, Next.js. Everyone knows Next.js, and it does everything. But why go for a framework that is specifically for content when you've got frameworks that can do everything? Firstly, JavaScript is slow, relatively. JavaScript is what will make your site slower than it needs to be. It's particularly slow when rendering content to the DOM. So if you're doing a content-driven site with big pages, that's what's going to be slowing you down. So instead, can we go back? HTML is fast. Even a massive page, if you're rendering it as just HTML, it's going to be super fast. So if possible, let's use the platform and send it as HTML. But why does speed matter? I probably don't need to tell you all of this, but even if you've got a site that is slowed down by its JavaScript, it's only going to be a few hundred milliseconds at most. So why does that matter? Because milliseconds make millions. This is the effect. This is Deloitte did a survey, did a study on the effects of 100 millisecond site speed improvement across hundreds of different sites. Retail, 8% increase in conversions. That's a big deal. Travel, 10%. Luxury, 8%. These are big numbers that translate into millions and billions of dollars and euros and so on. So how is Astro fast? So I've said that Astro is fast, but what makes it fast? With having less JavaScript, but how do we do that? So the secret is islands. Astro has an islands architecture. Now, what does that mean? It's an excuse for me to put a pretty picture on there. Let's enjoy that. But what it means is, I'm going to show this by showing a sort of typical e-commerce page. And the reason that I've gone with this is because it's got lots of different stuff on there. It's got content, it's got interactivity, it's got personalized stuff, it's got all kinds of stuff. But how would islands translate into something like this? So I would say most of this can be plain HTML, and most of it doesn't need JavaScript. These red bits, I would say, are probably the only bit on this particular page that need JavaScript. So, we want some nice type ahead in the search box. Cart, we want to update the badge in real time and so on. And then the booking button, let's make it so that it works. The rest of it doesn't need interactivity. I mean, maybe the images, but you can do that with, with plain HTML. So in Astro, this is a full Astro page. This is an Astro component, an Astro page. Now, obviously, I've simplified it here. And I'm importing two React components in here at the moment. So we've got these two. We've got a search bar, and we've got the avatar. Now, the avatar doesn't need to be interactive. And the rest of it, no interactivity. But with the search bar, we want that to have some type ahead. So how do we make this interactive in Astro? Because by default, this will be 0 JavaScript. You just add that. That's all you need to add. And then when the page loads, it will load the React runtime and just the amount of JavaScript that is needed to make that interactive. But that happens after the full page is loaded. So you get that down the pipe, rendered in the browser super, super quick. And then you drop in the bits of interactivity that you need. And we've got this this benefit of being able to have it when it loads, but there's some other options as well. So if it's off screen, you can make it load after the page is loaded, so only once you've scrolled it into view. Or client only means that it's a fully client-side rendered thing. So these are the bits here, then those are the bits that are going to be interactive. But if we look here, I've said that Astro tries to render everything in advance, if possible. So if you want to pre-render stuff, you can get the best speed. But you look at this, and there is stuff in here that can't be pre-rendered or can't be cached for a long time because it changes. So let's look at some of these things here. So the avatar, obviously that needs to change on every page load because this is you want to see your beautiful face while you're doing your shopping for some reason. The 5 rooms left. I mean, obviously most of those are faked, but that's an example. Let's pretend we're being honest. Let's update those in every hour. And the part at the bottom, let's say that is genuinely personalized based on your browsing history rather than just being a specific upsell. How do we make it that we don't have to render the whole page server rendered every single time? Because, why would you server render it when you've got these things that don't need to be server rendered? Because, the big bits on there don't need it. Obviously, you could stick a React component in there and make it hit an API and all that kind of stuff. But that means you've got to have all this JavaScript and stuff. One of the things that you can do now in Astro is we have got server islands. And what that does is that means you can have a fully static or long cached shell for the bits that don't change very much, and then have islands in there that are server rendered on demand with your own choice of caching on them. So if we say that avatar, and we want that avatar to load on every page as SSR, that's all we need to add. And that's just that little bit in there is enough to tell it that you want to server render that part. So you are able to have a fully static rest of the page, pre-rendered rest of the page, or long cached, and then the avatar could be server rendered. So this gives you an idea of the flexibility that you can have on these ones here. So Astro gives you these tools for making your site fast, but I've said it's content-driven, and it's not just about it being fast that makes it content-driven. Astro has a lot of tools for making your content easy to manage. So we all create content sites, and the first thing we do is create a lib folder and a loader and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, we've seen Strapi's now got clients and stuff, client APIs and everything, but overall, one of the first things you're doing is working out how to get your content loaded. So one of the things that we're going to do with Astro is we have a unified way of loading your content for an Astro site. So I'm going to give a little show about how you can manage content on Astro. So as my example here, I've got a simple blog. This is based on the Astro blog site, the Astro starter. This, at the moment, we'll start with some basic content that's come from Markdown, but I'm going to show you how that you can get that content and show how you can load it using content collections from different sources. And we might even get a bit of Strapi in there. Let's see. So at the moment, there's nothing there. No about page, no blog. There's not a lot there. So let's get some content. So the way that Astro handles content is with content collections. So this example that I've got here is using the built-in glob loader, which is just for loading files from disk. So this is loading a folder that's filled with Markdown files. This is the most basic starting point for most of these sites. And I've got a few example, just filled it with a bit of basic content, a little bit of metadata on there. It's all pretty simple stuff. But this is just loaded straight in and is just easily available with this single bit here. And we've got that metadata in there, and We can also add a schema for it. We use Zod for that. And let's sort that one out. And what that does is it allows you to validate your front matter metadata and do transforms on it as you want. Now, that's, we've got that on there. And this here now is available throughout your site wherever you want to use it. So if you've got this blog collection defined, you can then go into any of your components, and let's look at one of the pages and see how we're going to use the content in there. So, we've got an empty array. That'll explain why our blog had nothing in it. We will use the get collection function here, and this is just the super simple way of loading your content in there. And because you've defined your schema for it elsewhere, this is all typed already. So you've got, what we're just going to do here is we'll just loop through those. Let's create the page for rendering it. You can see there's a component down there called content, which is the Markdown content being loaded. And all we're doing here is just loading the collection in the same way and inserting it into the parameters for the page. And this is what we've got. We've got the blog is straight up there. So, brilliant. We've got a simple blog on there. But obviously, the experience for editing Markdown is, not great. This is a Strapi conf. We know that we want a CMS here, and we want something that's a bit more advanced than a bit of Markdown front matter in there for our code. But luckily, we are not restricted to just the built-in loaders. We're able to use something like Strapi, and we can load them in the same way and have this unified data layer. So I'm going to create this about page here. We've got a few blocks in there, FAQs and so on. And what we're going to do is we're going to show how, in the same way that we're loading Markdown, we can have the similar easy developer experience, but with Strapi instead. So we've got this collection defined here for the blog. The glob there is the built-in loader, but you can also have loaders that you write yourself. The API is very simple. Or you can distribute loaders as plugins. Now, luckily, Paul from Strapi has created a plugin for the loader for Strapi. And so you don't have to write any boilerplate for this. It's just there. You can load that in there, and then we can use the loader in the same way that we've got for the blog that's loading from Markdown. So let's create a pages collection in there, and we will use the Strapi loader for that one. We'll put that in there, and we're going to use the page content type. And then there's the parameters there, which are going to depend on the loader. I've pre-created this populate blocks thing there because I don't want to go into the detail of how we're going to define which blocks we're going to populate. So I'm going to just import that one. But there are loaders for all different sorts of data sources. So you can load things from like Airbase or from random APIs and stuff. But we've got this pages loader here, and we're going to stick that in the collections. And now we've done that, it's available in all the same places that the Markdown is. You just need to call get collection, and you've got your content. So we're going to go back and we're going to use this and show it how we've got it on a page. And the syntax for this is exactly the same as when you were pulling the Markdown. So people who have created sites using Markdown have got that just as easy. And look, and you can see there, this is fully typed. All of the TypeScript things are in there, and that has been defined by the loader. We didn't need to write the schema ourselves. So this has all got strong typing in there. which just makes it a lot simpler. So if we now go to the About page, all of the content from Strapi has now been loaded. And it's just in there and is being rendered using the custom components that are mapping to the individual blocks inside there. And this gives you the developer experience of the simplicity of the way that we would just be loading Markdown for the simple starter sites, but gives you that developer experience here for using for Astro as well. So that hopefully can give some of you an idea of how you can use Astro as a way to make your sites faster and get all of the content that you need loaded into Astro and have a nice, easy developer experience as well as a good editor experience from your favorite CMS as well. So that's it. That's me. So if anyone's got any questions,